What's up everyone? Alex here. Every single one of us discovered JRPGs in our own unique way, and it's thanks to that one game that set our expectations for the kinds of experiences we could expect for the genre. It's through this lens that I decided to invite some of my favorite YouTubers to talk about the games that shaped their love for JRPGs. So let's find out what those were, shall we? I discovered JRPGs through two games, one of which was the original Final Fantasy on the NES. But what actually helped define JRPGs for me wasn't that at all. It was a Japanese port of a popular Western RPG called Ultima 4 Quest of the Avatar. And if you take a look at these versions side by side, I think you'd agree with me that the Japanese port looked way better. Ultima 4 puts you on a quest to become the Avatar, a magical goody two-shoes who strives to represent the 8 virtues to become the epitome of spiritual well-being during an age of peace. I'm describing your role in this game in this way because your actions in this game truly did matter. For instance, running away from battle would strip the virtue of valor from you. Or if you attacked a beggar, which you can do by the way, you'd be stripped of the virtue of honor. And if you stole the alms that you gave said beggar, which you can also do, you'd be stripped of the virtue of honesty. Poor beggar. These virtues aren't just bequeathed upon you at the beginning. You'd have to demonstrate your mastery of that virtue, then venture through its corresponding dungeon in order to obtain it. So you can pretty much imagine how big of a pain this was if you lost said virtue. While based on a Western RPG, it cannot be denied that Ultima 4 on the NES looks and plays a lot closer to Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest than it does the original, which informed me at a young age that the term JRPG truly does describe a style of RPG specific to that region.
Hello you glorious gamers, my name is ChadOfStats and I'm here to talk about Persona 5. The game that redefined my love of JRPGs and gave me a coffee addiction. Before this game, I liked JRPGs, but it was a vague feeling. It didn't even compel me to check out games I know would have interested in me. I missed out on so many good JRPGs over the years because of that. I'm still playing catch up. Persona 5 drew me in with its style and its turn-based battles. Yes, this was my first at this game. I was very out of the loop. The game radiated flair from the beginning, with a UI design I positively fell in love with. The slice of life aspects perfectly broke up the dungeon crawling, preventing fatigue from setting in. Compelling characters you want to root for, mystery, and a story that had me hooked. Whenever I felt pressured by the deadlines or overwhelmed by the amount of choice I was given, I always saw the loading screen logo in the corner of the screen. Take your time. And I did. While playing, I felt as if I were a part of the group, a part of something. I found it so immersive that I lost many hours at a time in it. It gave me this rare feeling of wonder I didn't know I'd been chasing. And for that, I have been forever grateful. If you've not tried Persona 5, I wholeheartedly recommend it. Who knows, it might just steal your heart.
Hello everyone, Ren from HallowedBeThyGame, and I'm here to talk about Final Fantasy VII. I would not be on YouTube today if it wasn't for a buddy of mine in high school insisting I give this epic a try. And an epic it was, because up until that point, I had only ever played action games, fighters, and platformers. But what ensued in those 50 plus hours helped shape not only the way I viewed JRPGs, but also gave me a preview of how much more games could give. FF7 is the very first turn-based game I had ever played. And looking back, I believe the basic combat mechanics, with the rather addicting and approachable power progression with materia, to be a phenomenal starting point for any newcomer. The characters were the first to really transcend the mental boundaries I had placed unknowingly on what games could possess. They were some of the first characters I truly felt I could identify with as a brooding teenager in high school. Even with a nigh masterpiece of a soundtrack, what truly won me over is something that is unquantifiable. The memories that I shared scrounging the money together with my younger brothers to go to Funkoland, coupled with those late night game sessions in front of our CRTV, transcend time and to this day hold the warmest and happiest memories in my heart. Final Fantasy VII showed me that day that there was a whole new world of stories to explore. The themes explored show that even the ones we love may pass on. Learning to let go is a part of life. Years later, after losing my brother to a car accident, I still find there is a magic that can be felt and re-experienced within Final Fantasy VII. And every time I revisit Cloud and the gang, I step back in time to an era that holds the happiest of memories for me. In time, I would grow to love JRPGs as my favorite genre, but the foundation for that love is rooted in the most perfect of summers. Thanks so much, Alex, for the chance to share my story, and I'll see you next time.
Hello and ChadOfStats, chickenfillets here, and I'm here to talk to you about Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII on PSP. Now, to understand why Crisis Core shaped my love for JRPGs, we need to start at the beginning of my journey with JRPGs. Now, my first experience with a JRPG was back in 1997. Like many others, Final Fantasy VII was my first experience of JRPGs. But bear in mind though, this was the late 90s and I was just a wee loon. I'll be honest with you here, back then I scoffed at the idea of Final Fantasy X having no world map and being linear. It just gave me the heebie-jeebies. And back then I thought doing kickflips and Tony Hawks and dishing out Stone Cold Stunners in WWE games was the way forward. However, fast forward to 2016 and a chance conversation led to me being gifted Crisis Core on PSP, and this was a turning point. Revisiting Midgar from a new perspective through the eyes of Zack Fair, a combat system which saw me break away from this self-imposed turn-based only attitude, a game which taught me that not having a world map and being linear was okay. Crisis Core pushed me out of my shell and made me want to try and find new gaming experiences, which led me to the likes of Persona 4 Golden, Trails of Cold Steel, amongst others. And let's be honest, if it weren't for Crisis Core, my tastes in gaming would be completely different. I'd probably still be playing Tony Hawk's, to be fair. Thank you again to Alex at Backlog Battle for having me on today, and please remember to like, share and subscribe to the channel. This has been Chicken Fillets, and until next time, tatty bye!
Hey everyone, what's going on? My name is Taylor from the channel TheGamingShelf, and thanks so much, Alex, for having me on to talk about my favorite game of all time, Persona 4. Now, why did it shape my love for the genre? Well, I think one of the biggest reasons was that it opened my eyes to what JRPGs could be. Up until then, JRPGs that I played followed a very similar formula of, being pretty linear, trying to save the world, power, friendship, those types of things, a lot of the tropes. But to me, Persona 4 just felt different, and while it certainly had a lot of those tropes, there were so many things in it that I'd never really seen in a game before. Of course, it still had dungeon crawling and turn-based combat, but to me it was those life sim aspects that I really fell in love with. You got to know characters in different ways, and it also contributed to how you performed in combat, which I thought was so cool. And what I loved about Persona is that, yeah, there are some time limits, but for the most part, the pacing was really great, and you can kind of experience the game however you wanted to. Now when I look at games that I want to play, I want something more than just a linear experience. Now don't get me wrong, I love linear games, but I also love games with a variety of different kinds of gameplay and maybe are a little bit weird and different. Now, two games that I love that are super niche, but I feel like I love because of Persona 4 are Tokyo Xanadu and Sakura Wars. Tokyo Xanadu is very much a Persona game. You're in a Japanese high school, you travel to another dimension, there's some life sim aspects. It's very clearly inspired by Persona. And Sakura Wars takes a lot of those similar elements. There's the dichotomy of walking around, doing the adventure segments, talking with your characters, but then also doing the hack and slash combat and your mechs, not to mention some other mini games. And also there were some real life reasons why I loved Persona 4 so much. That was the game that got me back into JRPGs after not playing them for a long time, and I was also responsible for getting Aaron Fitzgerald, the voice of Chie, on an IGN talk show up at noon. In fact, I even worked near IGN at the time and got to be on the show, and that was just a really cool experience. And overall, this is just my favorite cast of characters. There are other games that have a great cast, but to me, nothing tops Persona 4. Overall, this is my shining example of what I look for in JRPGs, and while it's certainly rough around the edges and maybe hasn't aged super well, I don't think I'll ever see anything topping it.
Hey there everyone, Kraftium here. Now, there's quite a lot of games that shaped my love for JRPGs, but I think the earliest and most impactful one for me personally was Kingdom Hearts 2. I had played a bit of the first game when I was very young, but I was not really old enough to properly appreciate it. So when I booted up KH2, I was very surprised at how not Disney it all was, especially for those opening hours. But due to watching my brother play the Final Fantasy games on the PS1, I was still very familiar with everything. The game's combat might feel very simple, especially compared to a lot of the games I play today, but I really love just how incredibly visceral it all feels, and the likes of reaction commands make pretty much every fight feel like nothing short of a spectacle. But the thing that really set me on track to becoming a lover of JRPGs was their stories, and that all began with KH2. Little 8-year-old Kraft had never played a game that had such a interesting and convoluted plot that he'd actually paid attention to. And even though I was missing many things from not finishing KH1 or even knowing that Chain of Memories even existed, it just ended up feeling like part of the mystery I was supposed to uncover. It probably also helped that the edgy preteen brainworms infected me as a very small child, and as such, the likes of Blindfolded Riku and Organization 13 were right up my alley. I remember spending several long afternoons looking at things on YouTube like how to make a Keyblade or Anti-Form Sora versus Dark Cloud, and I even went as far as making my own Kingdom Hearts 2 sequel comic book with a dice-based RPG system, as well as my very own original characters, Do Not Steal. I really think that it's safe to say that right here is where I caught the JRPG virus.
Hello Backlog Battle friends, it's MissBubbles. My pick is going to be No Kuni 2 Revenant Kingdom. What a beautifully crafted JRPG that made me absolutely adore this genre. Not only is the cuteness overload a recipe to capture my heart, but the story and gameplay mechanics added to its perfection. Now I'm not going to spoil the story for you, but all I'll say is that it did a great job keeping me invested and the plot twists were always keeping me on my toes. Moving to the gameplay mechanics, there is so much for you to explore here, and to me, it just felt as an absolutely welcoming JRPG, as I was actually a JRPG beginner. Combat is more of a hack and slash, which made it easier for me to understand, rather than the more typical turn-based JRPGs that I usually play, and I don't know what I'm doing, and you have several party members to join you on the battlefield, keeping things fresh all the time. But the most fun part is the over 100 Higgledies. They are so cute, so adorable, and you get to capture them on your adventures, and they have so many different advantages to give you while you're in combat. You also have the other combat, which you probably heard about, where you control your army against the enemy, and while it can be a little bit challenging at first, once you learn the ropes, you're good to go. Additionally, there is the kingdom building aspect, and I absolutely loved it. I always appreciate a bit of management in my games, and seeing my kingdom expand and have more shops and whatnot added to the experience. Moving to the world itself, there are different islands and areas that you'll get to explore with plenty of side quests to complete, treasure to find, and altogether beautifully created areas that just had me so excited to see, combined with an awesome soundtrack. I just remember looking forward to my play sessions with No Kuni 2, and it came into my life at the right time for sure, so I highly recommend that you check it out. Thank you Alex for having me, it's always a pleasure to be in the same video as you. Until next time, stay bubbly.
It's sad to think that I've outgrown the series that shaped my love for JRPGs. It's debatable if a JRPG actually helped shape my love of JRPGs at all, but if I had to choose a JRPG for this, I'm gonna stick with the classics, Pokemon Red and Blue. Pokemon the anime, really. Pokemon set me up on a path to many of my interests in life. Interest in Japan, anime, art, and Japanese role-playing games. It was so cool to catch them all, trade with your friends, build an unstoppable team, and gasp when a Pokemon from the show was now in your party and at your command. While I've unfortunately grown out of Pokemon, I will always have a great deal of love and respect for the series.
Hey there, I'm culIen, and I'm here to talk about Mega Man Starforce. I've always been a fan of the Mega Man RPGs, with the Battle Network games in particular basically being my childhood. Ages 5 through 10, Mega Man baby. Its successor series, Starforce on the DS, has always stuck with me more though. This introduced a couple changes which, as an 11-year-old kid, made it one of the coolest games I had ever played up to that point. No longer was Mega Man your buddy you jack into the microwave. This time you fused with an alien dog to become Mega Man. The hardware improvement also allowed the sprite work to get a major overhaul, making the world comfier than ever to just hang out in. Peak vibes. Less comfy but equally cool was the combat, which made up for its limited movement with exhilarating action and more challenge. But that's not why I love Starforce. I love Starforce for the story and characters. The usual lessons about the value of making lasting connections with others are still there, it is a kid's game after all, but what made this hit better was the character writing, which felt a lot more nuanced. The most prevalent way they build on these themes is with the development of the protagonist, Geo. Before the story starts, his dad goes missing in space, presumed dead. The trauma of losing his dad like that shut him off from the world, leaving him afraid to make friends or even go to school. And as a shy kid who didn't really get to see his biological dad too much growing up, it made him relatable. He was someone a lot of kids who probably felt underrepresented by games were able to root for. When playing this, it felt like the Mega Man RPGs were maturing alongside me. I didn't even realize a game could touch on issues like this. I'm glad it did, because it made me more perceptive to storytelling in RPGs, while still being a great adventure all around. Starforce is still my favorite Mega Man series to date. I really hope Capcom gives them the legacy treatment in the near future. I mean, come on, who doesn't want to start making brother bands again?
Hi guys, TKN here, and thanks to Alex for letting me be a part of this awesome video. Now, when I think of games that sparked my love for RPGs, especially JRPGs, there were several in my mid-teens that were strong contenders for the title, games like Eternal Sonata, Ys Origin, or Lost Odyssey to name a few. However, it was only ever going to be one game that came out on top, and that is Ys VIII Lacrimosa of Dana. Up to the point that I played Ys VIII back in 2017, I had had a long hiatus from gaming, about 3 years by that point, as I was far too preoccupied with other endeavours. However, as I was coming to the end of my time in Japan and getting ready to finally say goodbye, I was fortunate enough to stumble upon the game, which at this point had just been localised, and recognising the name Ys after my times with both Oefenfeldgänner and Ys Origin, I decided to take the plunge. And boy, was it worth it. Ys VIII was the game that reignited my love for RPGs, the one that made me realise how much I love the genre as a whole. There was a certain melancholy for me at the time in that I had come to the end of my journey in Japan. I had travelled from Hokkaido all the way down to Hiroshima on a memorable experience, and even though my physical adventure was over, it was like embarking on a completely new one when I joined Ado and Dogi on the Isle of Seiren. Ys VIII had everything I could ever wish for in a game. It had a wanderlust and sense of adventure that I've yet to see replicated. It had some of the best music I had ever heard, memorable characters like Dana, who herself had her own challenges to overcome, and mysteries around every corner. And come the end of it, as the cast of Ys VIII all sailed away from the Isle of Seiren, it felt like a true sense of closure for me, in that not only could they say goodbye to their adventure, but I could do the same for mine.
Hey everybody, SuperDerek here, and you might already know that Earthbound was probably the first RPG that really made me fall in love with the RPG genre, but of course that was only the beginning. And just like the RPG junkie that I am, I started chasing the Dragon Quest, if you know what I mean. Searching for that next new high-level artifact that would give me that fix that I needed. It started off innocent enough, renting Super Nintendo games from the local grocery store, but then the next thing you know, I'm delving deeper into the darker corners of the internet looking for that harder stuff. That's when I found it. An underground message board where people would talk about the illicit activities that were not officially licensed by Nintendo of America, and definitely not getting their seal of approval, if you know what I mean. ROMs and emulation. And with me being a relatively unsupervised teenager over summer break with the internet in the early 90s could only mean one thing. An unhinged, delirious bender of wanton exploration of RPGs, I didn't know where Dragon Quest ended and Final Fantasy began. I started finding the weird Japanese, hardcore, uncensored stuff, the fan translations. With ZS and ES loaded up onto my Pentium 2 Windows 98 Hewlett-Packard Pavilion monstrosity, my dial-up internet connection-fueled JRPG binge was only interrupted by the momentary trips to the restroom and the occasional inbound phone calls. And that's when I found it. Breath of Fire, this beautiful, isometric turn-based RPG featuring a blue-haired protagonist that would change into a freaking dragon and summon lightning down from the skies. I don't think I finished half of the RPGs that I discovered that summer. Most days, all I remembered was waking up surrounded by half-eaten bags of Dorito chips, empty soda cans, and a greasy Gravis joypad. But Breath of Fire woke something up deeper inside of me, and from that day forward, there was no turning back. Sure, I may seem like a mature, sensible adult these days, but that's all just a front. I'm still an RPG junkie, and I'm still chasing that Dragon Quest.
Hi everybody, this is David, and thank you Alex for having me on. The game that got me really into RPGs as a child was Dragon Warrior 3, or as you might know it, Dragon Quest 3. I first got this game whenever I was in 4th grade and I broke my arm, and my mother felt really bad for me and she wheeled the NES into my bedroom, and she also purchased the game for me, and I spent an entire week playing this game. And I remember it came with this instruction manual that was just fantastic. It had a guide all the way up from the beginning straight to the end with beautiful artwork. Also, it was one of the first games that I played where you could choose all of your own classes. You could choose what you wanted your party to be, and the world itself was based upon our world. It was based upon Earth, and going to all the different countries and places and towns. I remember first climbing that pyramid, finding the golden claw, finding the meteorite armband, and then changing classes, getting a ship, getting Ramia the bird, and flying all over the entire world. It was just groundbreaking to me. There is a reason why this is the top-selling, most favorite Dragon Quest game over in Japan. It really was just absolutely groundbreaking. Thank you again, Alex, for having me on, and have a good one, everyone.
Hi, this is Emily from Orbalology, and the game that I like to credit for really solidifying my love for JRPGs is Legend of Heroes: Trails in the Sky. Early on, I was exposed to many JRPGs from Pokemon, Dark Cloud, Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy XII, but it wasn't until I got to Trails in the Sky that I really connected the dots of why I love the JRPG genre so much. And that's because of their rich storytelling and fantastic characters. The Trails series is rather notorious for being a very slow burn epic, with multiple story arcs that eventually converge together in a very satisfying way. In the first game, you follow Estella and her adopted brother Joshua, and together they travel around the country Liberal, training to be what are called bracers. And so bracers act as an independent group who are there to aid the people without the influence of the government or the police. And one of the things I really enjoy about these games is how well they balance the slice-to-life moments along with the very heavy political drama. It's a lot of fun just to go around all the different locations and towns, talk to the various NPCs, and really get to know them, but slowly becoming aware of how deep a lot of the political discourse is happening throughout the world. Now, the Sky games and the Trails series as a whole is not just carried by a great story and fantastic characters, it also has a lot of fun combat systems that's really integrated into the world building. The game really utilizes a fun spin on the traditional turn-based combat, with utilizing a delay system as well as aerial effects that just makes it a very enjoyable experience. Now, this can be a rather intimidating series to get into with just the sheer number of games, the slow localizations, and just how many hours you need to put in to get the full story. But they are well worth it and offer an experience like no other JRPG franchise today.
Thanks to everyone who participated and shared the games that shaped their love for JRPGs. And you can find links to everyone's channels in the pinned comment of this video. And while you're doing that, share the game that shaped your love for JRPGs in the comments below, and let's talk about it. And above all else, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.